Frank's Red Hot is the perfect blend of flavor and heat, so you can use an entire bottle to make recipes like buffalo chicken dip or buffalo nachos, or even things that don't start with buffalo. Frank's Red Hot, I put that on everything.
Hey, Craig.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi.
We lost a quarterback. Oh, but we have a quarterback.
We got a quarterback.
What's going on?
I think I wrote this in my story, but basically the hook for my story on Cam Ward's commitment was, a few weeks ago, it would have been, unfathomable to think about losing Jayden de Laura. And then even more unfathomable would be the idea that maybe we lose Jayden de Laura and maybe we upgrade in the process. Like, it's kind of, the whole thing is kind of bonkers.
Yeah, we are in the transfer portal era. And, this is your portal to that era for the Cougs. Podcast versus everyone. I'm Craig Powers. This is episode number 154, and for the 154th time, I am joined by Jeff Newser. And Jeff, like we were talking about just now, Jayden de Laura is gone. He is now an Arizona Wildcat. But the Cougs brought in Eric Morris, his former quarterback from University of Incarnate Word, Cameron Ward, to fill in that position. And honestly, I've watched film, you've watched film, and he's got a little bit of a wonky release, but man, he sure looks like he can make the throws, and he's the right size, and he just looks like a guy that was legit, and a lot of people thought so too. Who's ranked as one of the top guys in the transfer portal. So and Ole Miss wanted him, and WSU ended up with him. So if you're sad about losing Jayden de Laura, maybe also be happy that we brought in a guy that already knows how to run Eric Morris's offense and is pretty damn good at it.
Yeah. When we talked about him, however many weeks ago, as a guy who might follow Eric Morris here, I had not looked very closely at what he actually did outside of the stats. Like I knew he put up some huge stats. I knew, he was very prolific. I didn't know much about his, how he actually played. There are FCS quarterbacks who put up big stats and do pretty spectacular things, and you never really quite know what the situation is there. And guys usually end up at FCS, for a reason. And outside of the issues with transferring where you'd have to sit for a year to up transfer. There are reasons why there were not very many of those guys that came up and played. I mean, we had one, right, that came up as a grad transfer, Gage Gabrud, who didn't play. Now, I do maintain that Gabrud might have been fine, because, he ended up behind Gordo, and the guy ended up, leading Mike Leach's best offense. So, I mean, who knows? Gabrud could have been fine. Just because he couldn't beat out Anthony Gordon doesn't mean he couldn't play. But, I digress. With Cameron Ward, I started looking closer at him when he started becoming a legitimate possibility, and boy, I was I was unbelievably impressed. He is just Yeah, I mean he's 6'3", he's 220 pounds, so he's bigger than de Laura. The arm's a little bit bigger, I think. The release is a hell of a lot faster. You say wonky, it definitely is a little unorthodox, but immediately when I looked at it, it reminded me of Phillip Rivers, which it's kind of this 3/4 sling it style, and man, does the ball come out of his hand fast. So when you're running those air raid type screens, quick slants, things like that you try to do to keep defenses from getting on top of you when you're dropping back 40 or 45 times a game. I mean, the ball comes out so fast. He reads the defense so fast. It really is crazy what he's able to do as a passer. And so I do think there's a chance. I mean, obviously it's, you're saying a lot when you're like, oh, well, they upgraded. I mean, I'm not going to be that definitive because we know Jayden de Laura was pretty damn good, right? And we knew that, his upside was huge, and he was just sort of scratching the surface, I think, of what he was able to do. But man, like just from looking at the guy, it's like, holy shit, this guy can really, really throw the ball. He's really good. And I think when you combine that with what you mentioned, that, he knows the offense inside and out already, that just makes it that much more, the potential that much higher, for what he'll be able to do coming in just outside of his out and out talent.
Well, and one thing that makes me feel better about an FCS quarterback coming to FBS is were they dominating FCS because they're super athletic and they can run around and evade tacklers, putting up yardage on the ground, which may not be an athletic advantage they have in the FBS. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't really he's not really much of a runner. He doesn't scramble around that much.
Right.
He moves in the pocket, but he's looking to throw the ball. As a good air raid quarterback should be doing. And so, so it's been, that stood out to me when I watched the highlights, is that he's just a big dude. He's a big, strong arm dude, and he is not looking to run. And that makes me feel better. Like, cause if he was putting up a ton of yardage on the ground, maybe that's not coming when you're playing, cause Jayden de Laura is pretty damn fast, and he doesn't put up big running numbers. He put some nice plays, but he didn't, we didn't see him, run around everywhere and pick up big chunks all the time. So, it takes quite a special athlete to be able to do that, at the FBS level. But he doesn't really need it. He's got the arm, he's got the accuracy. And when I think about de Laura, one thing I've been watching de Laura through the last, 16 starts or whatever, 16 games. I was always kind of wondered, like, how did he fit? Mike Leach recruited him, but he didn't really seem to fit a Mike Leach air raid mold because he's not very accurate. He's a big play guy. He can make things happen, but he's pretty inconsistent. And I'm guessing they weren't expecting him to see the field. Leach's staff wasn't expecting him to see the field as early as he did under Rolovich, because it seems like he was going to, have some work to do to become a proficient air raid quarterback, where you need accuracy above all else. We know that Leach, we look at the guys like Gordon and Minshew and Falk that excelled in that offense, did not have huge arms. And, they were more about good releases, and they were about hitting guys in stride and knowing the offense. And not saying Jayden couldn't have done any of that, but it seems like for an air raid, Cameron Ward seems like a better fit, also because he's ran it before. And and we know that it takes like half a season, maybe a full season, for guys to pick some of these things up, to kind of get in the rhythm of it. And I'm hoping, obviously Ward is going to have some speed to adjust to, but it looks like he's coming to campus already. So he's going to have spring ball to adjust to that speed, which is really, really big. Because honestly, he needs to be the starter. Like, if you look at what the guys that we have, he is coming in to be the starter.
Yeah, I mean, the only way he doesn't start is if he gets hurt, right? Like that's it. If he gets hurt, maybe something happens, but and we can speculate about why Jayden de Laura decided to transfer out. But my personal belief, and this is just Jeff, the podcaster speculator, not Jeff, the reporter. I think that they knew about Ward's commitment probably last Friday. And then by Friday evening, Jayden de Laura was out, would be my guess. Because Friday was when Ward said, I'm announcing on Monday. Jayden de Laura says I'm out. Like, I think that sort of all of that is a little too coincidental to be, to be a coincidence. Like I think probably that's how things went. I don't blame de Laura if that's why he went. I don't, totally blame him. They're bringing in a guy who, knows the system, has run the system, who has this, same amount of eligibility as you. And, once you've started, it's like, you see yourself as a starter, right? Like you mentioned that, if he had come in under Leach, there's a 0% chance he would have played at all at this point, right? Like he would have not played at all. Mike Leach puts guys back there who have, tens of thousands of reps in the air raid, in practice, and they just don't play until they're ready. And it's by the time he gets 8 years deep in a program, he's got a room full of guys. Cameron Cooper very likely would have been a starter. He would have gotten a chance to run out there for, however many games. Probably.
Yeah, or Gunner, one of the two.
I think it probably would have been Cooper. I know Leach was, he's real high on Cooper. Always thought Cooper could be a good quarterback. So I think it probably would have been him. De Laura would have spent the last 2 years not playing, and things might have been different. But when he spends 2 years playing, being the guy, and he leads a team to one of its bigger victories in years in the Apple Cup, he probably feels a little hard done by it. Probably feels a little, to borrow an overused term, disrespected. And I can't blame him if that's how he feels. Like, players believe in themselves, and if he feels hard done by it, then I get it. And I don't think anybody's wrong here. I know that, we had a few people in the comments saying, oh, well, Dickert shouldn't have recruited a guy. We wouldn't have lost him if he hadn't recruited a guy who, played the same position, had the same number of years, and, it's kind of a dick move. And I'm just like, the coach's job is to amass as much talent as possible. The best programs in the country take 5-star quarterbacks every year. So, this isn't a situation
and
where
WSU is taking high 3-4 stars every year.
Yeah. So if you got a chance to grab a really good quarterback, you do it. And, if the kid who's already there thinks that's, rude, then, you just say, okay, well, thanks and best of luck, and, wish them well. There's just really nothing else to do. You just amass talent and you go from there.
And, you think back to Dickert's kind of opening conference after he accepted the permanent job. The way he was talking about how he wanted to build the offense around Jayden de Laura, that honestly looks to me like he was doing making a sales pitch. So I'm thinking de Laura was already thinking of moving on at that point. I'm sure de Laura was already thinking of moving on as soon as Rolovich was gone, because that's a guy who recruited him in Hawaii when Rolovich was at Hawaii, and then he had already committed to WSU, and then he recommitted to Rolovich. So this, he already went through two coaches at WSU really, and probably wasn't looking to, stick around for a third when, the coaching staff wasn't going to be there. They probably could have talked him into staying in some way, but once you have an idea that a guy may be leaving, you have to have another option. They weren't going to rely on Xavier Ward and Victor Cabales to start next year. Because they already lost Adrian Laura from the recruiting class. So they had to bring a quarterback in regardless. Like, you just needed a guy in the room, and you had to. If you're going to look for a guy, you might as well look for a guy that can start. And like you said, you got to. Just because you have a good player in place, there's no reason not to go get another good player. There's no salary cap here. It's not like the NFL where it's like, well, if you had two good quarterbacks and you had to pay them both $20-30 million a year, you can't do that. But here, you could just stack them. And And yeah, it's fine. De Laura doesn't want to. I mean, de Laura's going to Arizona. He's going to be the starter there. Like, he's better than Will Plummer. We already know he's beaten out Gunnar Cruz before. So, like, they probably sold him as, you're going to come in and you're going to be the guy. And good for him. They obviously were terrible this year, but they're adding a bunch of transfers, and I'm not looking forward to facing de Laura in November in Tucson for sure.
No.
Yeah, so, I mean, he's going to relish that. But honestly,
hopefully we'll get overhyped de Laura that overshoots every receiver. Like that's what
please.
we're for.
Yeah, but it's just like I can't be mad about anyone in this. Like, I can't be mad at anyone in this situation. Like, because it's just a weird situation. Like, a coach left in the middle of the season, and you thought he was going to be your guy for 4 years, and then a new coach comes in. He doesn't know if this guy's sticking around. He's got to look for someone else. And then of course he goes and finds this offensive coordinator, and lo and behold, he's got a quarterback who already runs that offense. So. What are you not going to look for nice fits like that? So it's good. And hey, WSU is able to come in with the right NIL deal to bring him in, beat out Ole Miss.
Yeah, that was super funny reading that story, man, because I don't think I'm giving anything away now to say that in our Slack chat there was chatter about what was going on behind the scenes with the NIL stuff with CougsFirst and all that, and it was like, wow, okay, like we're really doing this, and then the story came out on Cougfan. If you guys haven't seen it, I'll try to link to it in the show notes. But story on Cougfan detailing how these alumni from who get together with CougsFirst. Put together an NIL package for Cameron Ward. It's pretty wild, man. That is not a thing that I anticipated developing out of NIL rights, that we would be dropping bags to get quarterbacks to WSU. That was definitely unanticipated, and frankly, I love it.
Yeah. And I'm sure they were, just in case they had one that they potentially were making up for Jayden de Laura, and there's going to be more guys. And I think, if you're a Coug fan, you should feel good about the fact that we now have this pretty organized thing in place for creating these NIL packages. As far as we know, as far as we've heard, that, they got a lawyer, they got a guy that can create these contract type things. And they have a group of Coug businesses that can be a part of the NIL deals, and who can be represented by these players. It's nice to see that WSU has that ready to go, because if they didn't, they'd probably be pretty fucked. It's good. It's good for the players, that's for sure. Cameron's coming here, and he's going to have a little extra money, and I honestly, with the status he's going to come in with, and he's going to be kind of the lead guy, he deserves it. And so, deserves to make some money off of that notoriety and the tickets he may sell or whatever. I'm glad that it was good to hear. Kudos to Cougfan for not, for writing that story, also being a part of it and everything. So that's nice to see. Nice to see that subscription money is going to a good cause. But obviously, the transfer portal is never ending, and WSU has 3 more guys that obviously we saw that Cameron Cooper landed in Hawaii. Good for him. Found a place to go. Maybe, decent chance he gets to play there, because they are losing people left and right.
They are. They need players, man. They need players after that whole offseason debacle with Todd Graham, man. That's, whoo boy. But it's not a great situation in terms of the coaching staff setup, and he may very well have another coach before his career is over. But good for him finding a spot that wants him. And I know that we have a lot of fans who were sort of obsessed with the fact that he was a 4-star, and why didn't he ever get a chance. And it's like, man, he got lots of chances every time he was on the field. He was bad. So, I really hope that, Hawaii works out for him. I hope he's good. But I also think that, if you are inclined to wonder what, the rest of the college football world, thinks of Cooper, he was on the market for a while. Right? Like he announced after the Apple Cup that he was transferring and then didn't announce until just now that he was going to Hawaii. Jayden de Laura was out there for about 48 hours before, 72 hours, something like that, before committing to Arizona. So, yeah, it's, more power to him for going to Hawaii. I hope it works out. I hope he starts. Also, that's probably about where he belongs.
Yeah, and it's... Honestly, if you're going to end up a place, spend a few years in Hawaii, he's an LDS kid that, there's a big LDS population out there. He can be around if that's, if he wants to be comfortable with that. Plus, they got the beaches. He's already got that look, man. He's already got that long, beautiful hair.
Yes,
he sounds like a great setup for him. And hopefully he gets some run and I'm rooting for him. He's been in at WSU. He did 40 billion reps in the air raid, and then came in and had to learn a new wing T formation package. Like I don't, it was quite a journey for him. So hey, go enjoy some warm weather. You're not going to have to worry about slipping on the ice in Honolulu. So That's nice.
Sunshine, beaches, water.
So
that sounds like the dream.
So on top of that, we also got 3 more guys entering the portal. So 2 of the guys haven't played much. Penny Noalu and Billy Pospisil. That's the hardest name
I think
for me
that's
to say.
right. Pospisil, I think is
Billy
right.
Pospisil. That is like, if you got any liquid in your mouth, that's a hard word to say.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. So, and then of course, I think the biggest one is Brian Green. Obviously, we didn't know if he was going to come back or not. He's got it's extra year of eligibility he's using, but he's going to go try to play somewhere else. A guy that played a lot of time at center and then at guard. A former walk-on guy out of Yakima, where I'm from. So I played at Ike, but he's obviously So I don't know what. It seems like he would have plenty of playing time. So maybe there's just not a coaching staff he wants to be, or
might be more to it,
which is fine. These kids commit to certain guys and they have to go through changes, and that's kind of what I said with de Laura is you keep you go through so many changes. At some point you're like, maybe you want to make the choice in the change, right? And he's
especially for a guy who was a walk-on, right? Like he didn't have a lot of options at the beginning, and
he will now. Like a guy with that much experience and that ability and that nice track record, that people will want him. Now, where does that put WSU? Already a thin offensive line coming back. This is just another guy on top of it. Now you're losing basically 4 starters from the offensive line going into next year, with Beresford also, and then obviously Ryan and Lucas gone. So it's going to be a very different looking offensive line next year. And obviously, if you watch the particularly first half of the Sun Bowl, that could be a bit scary. But, a lot of these guys were recruited to play in an air raid style. Maybe they will find that their talent fits a lot better in with Eric Morris's offense. I don't know. I'm a bit worried. I'm not ready to say it's going to be an utter disaster, but it's definitely not going to be the strength that it has been in past years.
Yeah, and I'm willing to be open to the idea that development takes place between now and September. I mean, it's especially when we think of, the right tackle, Christian Hilborn, who started out there in the Sun Bowl, who looked, so bad in the first half. But then, I do want to, point out he came in the second half periodically and was not glaringly horrible.
Noticeable. He was not noticeable.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the risk of sounding, a little too Pollyannish, it's like, well, he, from first half to second half, he figured some things out, and, it was first time playing live action against actual men. And so it didn't go great. All right. Well, maybe that's, an indication of his true talent, and maybe that's an indication of a guy who was lost, and overwhelmed and really just kind of, had a bad game. If he's as good as they think and, they're high on him, then, maybe he, he looked to me a little heavy, maybe not, but he looked a little heavy to me. Maybe he gets in a little better shape. He's figured some things out, refined some technique, gets a little stronger between now and next fall. I mean, he was a true freshman, so I mean, I'm willing to hold out hope that they can figure it out. There's always, as we've, said ad nauseum, the transfer portal out there. It does seem like there's fewer offensive linemen, and maybe that's not, I don't know if that's just purely anecdotal or not. Maybe it's just because guys that go in the transfer portal who are linemen, don't make as big of a splash, but it certainly seems like, you get more transfers from, particularly offensive players who, where there's only one ball, there's one quarterback or one or two running backs who carry the ball, or, two or three wide receivers who play. So, maybe that's just anecdotal. I don't know, but it sure seems like there are fewer quality options out there with the offensive line. So, I think we all hope that they can find someone who can play immediately on that line and shore that up. Maybe one, maybe even two, if they could find two, that'd be rad.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's going to be interesting. They're obviously looking for a running back as well. We saw that Nathaniel Pete from Stanford said he had been, announced he had received an offer. That would be a great guy to pick up. Hopefully they can land a running back, and to go along with that offensive line. So it seems like there's a lot to still happen with the portal here, and a long way to go before we wrap up what the roster is going to look like in August. So it should be interesting to follow. The portal it just makes movement is more frequent, and then with NIL that's even that adds on a layer of it, which for me, and I know for you, I'm happy to see the players get the agency that they deserve. And I would, if you're worried about them leaving everywhere, I recommend reading Jacob Thorpe's column in the Spokesman today, online, about, potentially, if there was just a system in place to literally give the players a share of the revenue, you potentially could see these players stick around longer.
Yeah, I mean that's the answer to people crying about bowl games too, right? Pay them.
The literal players they're not going to sit out for playing in the game. Yeah, if you're only paid,
pay them and they're not going to sit out
in the game. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean Jacob Thorpe's piece is great. I agree with it wholeheartedly. It's one of the reasons why I love what's happening with the NIL stuff. I mean, one thing that people, talk about getting concerned about with the NIL stuff is, that's money that would be going to the athletic foundation. True. It would. And I am ecstatic that instead that money is flowing directly into the pockets of the players. Like I'm 100% okay with that. And I know that it's not a real popular opinion with some people, because they like things the way they are and fear change, but those days are gone, folks. You're gonna have to adjust. And the players are the ones who make the product. Sorry, so whatever they can get into their pocket, I am all for. And so if you don't like it that way, then negotiate something above the table. To me it seems like a pretty simple solution. Pay them, and then you don't have to worry about that. pay him, and then, and he'll still be there, but the incentive to go elsewhere will diminish, and then you could potentially also, sign contracts that, tie a guy to a university for 2, 3, 4 years. I mean, there's ways to make this happen. It's as Jacob said, it's probably time to stop pretending that we're not already, that, college football hasn't already been professionalized. But I do think that what's kind of happening now, just not to go too far on a tangent, but, I one of the other reasons why I love what's happening right now is I think it's going to clarify for a lot of people what matters to them with college football. Up until this point, a lot of people said, what really, really mattered was, we don't want players to get paid. We want them to be like any other college student because I was a college student, and okay, fine, great. And that's the, the myth of amateurism and all that. Now people are sort of like needing to really clarify what it is that they want, what it is that they actually connect with about sports at the college level. Jacob Thorpe makes the case that, what people connect with is this idea of, who's on the team and watching them develop and, players being there for multiple years, and that it's, it takes something away when, you've got a constant turnover, constant roster turnover. And I think we could argue that that's probably true when you see what's happened with, the upper level NCAA basketball teams, right? And,
right.
Just the investment there from fans, following those teams. And it's just not quite the same. There's still March Madness, which people totally get into, so it's great. But it's not, it's maybe not quite as fervent, in the time leading up to it. And so much of that, I think, is, nobody's quite sure who's on which team. Teams that are ranked number 1 or number 2 or number 5, are typically teams that have brought in, high level, top 10, top 15 recruits to, just guys you've never heard of. So all that to say, I think people are kind of like being forced to reckon with what is it about college sports they really like. And I think they're going to find that paying players really makes no difference at all, in terms of their fandom. And I think ultimately the solution is pay them, because that'll solve a lot of the issues without, detracting from, the things that people are so worried about losing, because those things have been lost, as Paul Wolf famously said. So
innocence lost. Yeah,
it's already happened, man. It's already happened. It happened decades ago.
Honestly, a lot of this NIL stuff was just a shadier business before. It was definitely already happening.
It's just above the table now.
Yeah. It's just allowed now.
And people, by the way, who maybe were reluctant to be shady before, are like, actually, let's do this. I tend to think that the bags that WSU is dropping right now are significantly higher than the bags we've ever dropped. So, we are. Yeah, we've gotten the green light, and we're going.
I'm not sure if Jed Collins and Robbie Tobeck are going to be handing out bags in the old way.
Yeah, I tend to think the answer is no.
Yeah.
So now, we brought them into the fold. Now let's do it.
Yeah, let's go. Let's. I'm just glad we got it in place, and good luck to all the guys that have left. Welcome.
Yep.
Cameron Ward, sling it around.
Yep.
Throw
let's do it.
50 TDs next year. Would love it.
I'm fired up.
Yeah. So, but obviously, Jeff. We were talking about, the what Dickert talking about rounding out his coaching staff today. I know you had some hot takes on the coaching staff. So, how are you feeling about the staff he's put together so far, especially these position assistants?
Yeah. Fine.
Great.
That's it. I'm fine. Yeah. Seems good.
So he retained a couple guys. Barker, the 65-year-old safeties coach, Banker, is retiring.
Yep, he's retiring.
Well, he didn't say that specifically, but he alluded to it. Which he's been a defensive coordinator for a long time and all this stuff. So good for him. But yeah, anyways, yeah, they have almost got it put together, which is the only thing that I want to see is get coaches in there so they can recruit and especially recruit that portal. So, yeah, that's what we need. But yeah, so football news to start off during basketball season. What can we say? We give the people what they want. But yeah, let's take a break and then we'll come back and talk hoops.
And we're back.
We're back. And once again, I lied. I always lie. We're not going to talk hoops yet. We're going to talk beer. Jeff, what are you drinking tonight?
I, last week, found myself with a few hours to kill in Tacoma. My wife, Sarah, was at the doctor, and because of everything going on with COVID, I was not allowed to come in and hang out. So I went ahead and drove over to the Engine House number 9, which I don't know how recently it reopened, but I think it's fairly recent that the pub reopened, and got some food and oh, it was a few months ago. Okay, got some food, got some beer, got some basketball watching in, and so I picked up some bottles and some cans, and this is one of them I picked up. I've had this is the Meraki barrel aged farmhouse ale.
Which number?
Flavored. This is the batch number 5. And I've had a couple of the earlier batches when the pandemic first hit and E9 basically opened up their cellars and were like, here, we're selling everything because we need to make money. I bought a bunch of bottles back then, some of the earlier batches, and loved them. So saw this, had to get another one of these. It's wonderfully tart, and it's got that berry, blueberry, blackberry flavor to it. And it's delicious. It's absolutely delicious.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Meraki is it's not always the same fruit that they add to the beer. So like Meraki number 2 was just straight up blueberries. I think that one's blueberries and another berry. I can't remember, blackberry or something. Or
yes, blackberry, blueberries and blackberries.
But my favorite so far, and Meraki number 1, I think was just a straight up saison, so it didn't have anything in it. But my favorite one so far has been Meraki number 3. I don't think Meraki number 4. Maybe it's Meraki number 4. I feel like they skipped one of them, or maybe it was just so small that they didn't. 4 is the one that they've skipped. 3 has been my favorite one. That one was actually made with Pinot Noir and Cabernet Sauvignon grapes. And that one is just super well done. It's one of my favorite beers that E9 has ever made. All the Meraki beers are good, but that one is my favorite one. And I see that you had it in.
Yeah, I was going to say, looking back at my Untapped, it was number 1 and number 3 that I bought back then. So
yeah, number 1 is I think it's. It was just
it just says it's
no fruit.
It's just a sour ale.
That one's really, really good too. Just straight up no unfruited, very good. Has a lot of funky vibes. But yeah, that's one of the beers they put a lot of effort into for sure. But they have an incredible wild ale program. If you are into sour beers and saisons, you should definitely check out E9 in Tacoma. They're one of the best in the in the state, on the West Coast, whatever you want to say. Yeah, at that stuff.
And what they're great about is that the stuff's not overpoweringly tart and acidic that you can get in a lot of beers that are sour. And like I said, I hadn't had one in a while, and I was like, because I actually bought these not at the pub. I bought them at the tap room because the pub didn't have a bunch of stuff. They actually didn't have the lager that I had there, which was fantastic. And they were like, oh, they probably got them at the tap room. So I drove to the tap room, and then I was like, man, I haven't had, a good sour, a good wild ale, or a good saison, or anything. I haven't had that in a while. So I picked up a few bottles, and I'm sure I'm glad I did.
Absolutely. Obviously, I love E9 so much. But I have been on some quarantine lockdown in my house for a bit because my daughter brought home COVID from daycare. Now I haven't tested positive for it, and no one else has, but so we still got to just kind of hang tight,
laying low.
So I haven't, our kind of regular beer stash is tapped, so I've been really having to dig into my reserve, my cellar recently. So I've been having a lot of big beers. Last week I obviously did. I had a big beer from Sig, and this week I'm having one that I just kind of bought. I kind of got stronger. I remember when I bought this at Edison City Ale House. One of my friends, he knows I really like barley wine. He's like, "Oh, you have to get this beer. Just get this beer." Because it's not typically one I would get because it's not barrel aged, and it's also a barley wine with an adjunct. But it's called Vanilla Maris, and it's a collaboration between Timber Ales in New York, Horace Ales in the LA area, Horace Aged Ales, and then Mindful in Jersey City. The most prominent of those is probably Horace Aged Ales. They've definitely hit the hype beast market pretty hard, making a lot of heavily adjuncted stouts and stuff. People seem to like a lot above my weight class there in terms of I'd really have to, if I wanted to trade for it, I could, but I'm really not into that game anymore. So I haven't had many from them, but they were a collaboration on this. I think it was brewed at Timber Ales in New York. I don't know why they had it at Edison City. Timber Ales, maybe they distribute out here. But so Vanilla Maris, and so it has a picture of an otter and then a hashtag BIL, which is Barley Wine is Life. Hashtag Barley Wine is Life is something that basically the beer blogger Don't Drink Beer, also known as Alex Kidd, is his actual name, kind of started because he's a big barley wine fan. And then he also, Maris Otter is a type of malt that is very commonly used in barley wines, especially English-style barley wines. And so he kind of created this imagery of it, literally an otter. And so they definitely picked, you could tell these guys are fans of Don't Drink Beer because they had, they have this really cool picture with an otter and then hashtag BIL. So I'm of course drinking it out of my, one of my glasses that I have procured because I am a patron of Don't Drink Beer, that says Barley Wine is Life on it. And then it has these, he also has this joke about a lot of breweries will make glassware and stuff that it literally just rips off nostalgia, like video games or comic books or whatever from the past. And so he's got these two otters. One's an otter, and then it looks like one's a walrus. And the walrus is it's kind of in the style of Mega Man, and he's shooting out cease and desist letters. Because usually what happens is these breweries make one-off glassware or something, and then they get a cease and desist, but it doesn't matter because they weren't going to make it again anyway. And then some beer nerd pays $300 aftermarket for the glass because it looks like Ninja Turtles or Mega Man or whatever. Because, all of us 90s kids grew up and have jobs with money now, and we spend it on crap like this. So it's pretty funny. Then it's got this is the Christmas edition. So the walrus has a little hat, has a little Santa hat on, and the otter has reindeer horns. And so I got this glass. They just offer it up to buy if you're a patron. It's made by a company called Permanent Hangover, who makes a lot of really funny beer meme merch that sells out immediately. So it's cool. I always like to drink my barley wines out of these glasses, and this particular beer actually. It's a big barley wine, unbarrel aged. I thought it was going to be quite intense and unwieldy, but I think the vanilla kind of mellows it out a bit. kind of almost gives it that vibe of being barrel aged without barrel aged, because you're getting kind of a vanilla note that you might get from a bourbon barrel. Definitely without like the harsh burn of the barrel, or the kind of the way the barrel might mellow out the beer a little bit by just balancing it. So because you don't get like the oak to balance it, but it's definitely big, sweet barley wine. It's pretty tasty. Not something I chase after, but it's a lot. It's well done. Definitely something, if you like barley wines, to check out. I bought it like a long time ago at Edison City Ale House. I don't know if they still have it. But if you see it, Vanilla Maris, check it out. Timber Ales, Horse Aged Ales, and Mindful Ales. Check them out, I guess. Good luck with that Horse Aged Ale stuff. If you want to go, and if you got some high value beers to trade, maybe you can procure one of their bottles. But good luck on that. But yeah, so that's the beer. We want to talk about basketball, but I think first we should talk about a former WSU basketball player and always a Coug, who missed 2.5 years of competitive basketball, but on Sunday night came back for the first time, and that of course is our favorite guy, Klay Thompson, but that was just so cool to see. I tweeted that, Klay Thompson is my favorite NBA team, which is like 100% true. I don't have an NBA team. I don't even really root for the Warriors that much.
I know.
But it's, my NBA team. I'm wearing a Sonics hat right now, but obviously I don't have them to root for. So I'll root for Klay's success, and I'm always happy to see that, and just to see him get back, to see him be on the intro, out of Washington State University, which it's so
made
cool
my heart swell. Like I was like the Grinch in the movie where his heart grows, however many times bigger it is. I don't
3
remember
sizes.
the line. Yes, 3 sizes. That's what it was. Yeah, my heart was 3 sizes bigger listening to that, and I legit cried a tiny bit. I'm kind of a crier anyway. I'm kind of a crier, but it was just, man, I don't think there's anybody on the planet who loves playing basketball more than Klay Thompson. There are plenty of professional
who loves
athletes
being a basketball player.
Yes.
Like a famous basketball player.
Yeah. And to have that, denied and taken away from him for the last 2.5 years, like I can only imagine. I mean, you can see it when he talks about it, right? Like, the happy-go-lucky Klay is just like, blah, 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 But then like when he, in that moment, when he's getting a little introspective about it, like you can see that it was not easy for him to have that taken away from him. And that's, to see it handed back to him and see just the joy on his face and the joy with which he plays. And, in a testament to modern medicine, man, he looks awesome already. I mean, he had a poster dunk in his first game, like, coming off a blown knee and a blown Achilles. And what does he do? Craig, I guarantee that you do not get off the floor with your Achilles the way that you did before you did your Achilles. Klay Thompson.
I haven't had quite the rehab that Klay has had.
But that's the thing. Like, it's the rehab, the surgeries. I mean, there were days. It's in our lifetime that an ACL injury was a career ender. It's like that's not that long ago.
Well, and really, the ACL was the least serious of this. Because
which is wild.
Achilles take much longer to heal.
Yep.
And can be much more devastating. And if you want them to heal right, you have to kind of do it slowly. They used to just put them in a cast and then for 6 months, and then it would grow back, and then you come out and people would rip their Achilles again. Yeah. But now you use it. You use your Achilles as much as you can, so that it works itself back. And he took, he was over a year from that. My doctor told me it would be at least a year before it's fully even healed. And I don't even think it's going to be that way in a year, honestly, because that year's coming up for me in a month and a half. But for him to work, it's a pretty devastating injury. Like ACLs almost are pretty commonplace for athletes at this point, like
and pretty standard, I think, in terms of what they do.
But Achilles are kind of newer that they've been able. It's a little newer that they've been able to get athletes to work back into it, because that even more recently was a career ender. And when he had that on top, he was working his way back from the ACL, and then in a damn pickup game, blew his Achilles. Like that's just so rough. It's better than blowing it in your living room or whatever. But it's still it's obviously much worse for him because it's his livelihood and it's identity as a human. So that's incredible. And honestly, you watched him. He was, I think, frustrated. He seemed frustrated with that he could only play. They have him on the minutes cap.
Yep.
And then he seemed very pissed that he missed his first three. Yeah. And it was really cool that he scored the first bucket of the game and stuff. But after the game, he was so like, he was like, yeah, I didn't, I was a -2 on the plus minus. I was 7 of 18. That's not great. But then he's like, I just love that I'm looking at the box score with my name on it right now. Yeah. And that's just what goes back to what you say. He just loves play the game. Like, he's just so happy to be back. And he's just such a great and awesome, like, representative of our university. And like, so it's so great to follow him. And so you just want to see him happy. And so it's been a really fun week watching him get back.
And he's such an easy guy to root for. There are so many athletes, for the reasons you mentioned, but also, there are so many athletes that, constantly seem like they're in a constant state of anger or I mean, whatever, elite athletes motivate themselves in all sorts of ways. And, sometimes
I'll say, like obviously Klay probably, had a little bit easier background than a lot of those guys too.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Klay doesn't probably like see basketball as I have to feed my family and take care of my family and everything like that as maybe some other guys might, because he grew up with an NBA basketball dad. So it's a little bit different, and that probably helps with his, happy-go-lucky a little bit personality.
Yeah. And he's, paired with another guy basically like that too, with Steph Curry, right? So they're really easy guys to root for. I know you said you don't really, cheer for the Warriors so much. I do. Like, I kind of adopted them because I was like, well, Klay plays for them, and I love, I've probably mentioned this before, but I love uniquely talented players. Steph Curry is, the definition of that. Yeah. So I just and they're really easy to latch onto for the reasons we just mentioned. They play beautiful basketball, and that's fun, and Steph and Klay, the Splash Bros, they take the game about as seriously as it should be taken, which is, as a hyper competitive event, but ultimately a game. And, they want to play, and it's fun, and they're full of joy. And I love that. And, as I'm watching here, a replay of the Warriors game against the Grizzlies tonight, like, again, he just looks, just so happy, he
got real mad that Steph pulled up from 28 on a fast break and Klay was open over on the wing.
Yes. There's definitely a little bit, I can see it in his face, in this close game. There's definitely a little bit of the, the competitor coming out, but it's like I said, it's, it's just fun, and I love it. And I'm so happy for him. He deserves it. He deserves every piece of it. Obviously the most talented player I ever saw play any sport at Washington State. Just incredible. And the development he made, over his years at Wazoo, and the player he made himself into in the NBA, man, he has earned every bit of it. Truly the definition of a gym rat, and he's, he deserves this, man. He deserves it. I love it.
Yep. Go Klay. We love it. I didn't like them taking the Klay Day, name from us. We had our own Klay Day, but I guess the rest of the world could use Klay Day. for that day too. But yeah, so basketball, Klay Thompson, we got some hoopers on the team. No one quite like Klay Thompson, at least yet. But finally, they won a damn basketball game over someone who, is ranked higher than 250th or so, so
yeah.
That was,
they had only lost 2 in a row, but it had been like 3.5 weeks.
It was 2 in a row, but it was like 4 or 5 though too. So it was.
Yes, it was 4 out of 5, and just
it had been
since December 18th since they had won a game. So yeah, that was good, man. That was fun. The Colorado game was a bit of a bummer, just in the sense like you felt like they were right there. Obviously, they had a lead at another lead at halftime. Colorado came out and
you kind of feel, if they had Noah for a bit in that game,
yep.
The difference is made up.
Maybe they get a little more offense. I'm not sure how much of a difference it makes defensively because they just, the issues were Batty and Walker. Those guys just absolutely annihilated whoever we put in the post. It just did not matter. So it's, that's a thing that's kind of got to get figured out. I don't know how you figure that out. To me, it looks like our bigs are playing not to foul, which is the easiest way to get a foul. So I'm honestly not sure.
Or give up a bucket.
Yeah. I'm honestly not sure what you do about that. I don't know if playing Matt DeWolf a little is the way to go, but that's really tough again for spacing issues, because if you've got basically right now what we've seen is having one big on the floor is kind of our most effective setup most of the time, whether that one is Gay or Abagidi or Jackson. That's kind of been our most effective setup. And so if you put DeWolf on the floor to go bang some bodies and hack some people and just kind of not let you get run over in the interior, I don't know what else you do with the other guys, but it's quite a quandary, quite a conundrum. I don't know that Kyle Smith has a lot of answers because he went zone against Colorado, and that was like the worst of both worlds, where we're giving up easy buckets and also our guys were fouling out. So I don't know. It was better against Utah, but still, Utah went to work inside a fair amount as well. And yeah, I don't know. It doesn't get a lot easier on that front.
I think we saw the offense, it was particularly inside the paint or inside the arc. A little bit better against Colorado. That 60%, 21 to 35 from twos.
Yep, hugely
that was positive. Obviously they didn't shoot. Michael Flowers going 1 of 9 of 3 from 3 was rough. He had a real bad game, one of his worst.
Yep.
And that was obviously detrimental. And
maybe that's where Noah makes a difference if he plays.
Yeah. Maybe Flowers doesn't take 9. Maybe Flowers has a couple more looks inside the arc or whatever. But one thing that was, Mohamed Gay against Colorado was largely a non-factor offensively. He took 2 shots, missed a couple free throws. He obviously had to play a lot of defense, pick up some fouls, whatever. But F.A. and Deshaun were both in foul trouble quite a bit. So, yeah, that was rough. And, but they still, had a chance at the end. They were there. They just couldn't pull it out. But, it was nice to come back against Utah. Got a little injury luck against Utah to have Brandon Carlson out. And once that happens, it's like, you got to win this game. Like, you got to win this game. Like, if Brandon Carlson is out against a team that you're already better than with him, and they went out and they did. They took care of it. Absolutely ripped them apart offensively, which was good to see. It's finally, they've been running pick and rolls all year.
Yep.
And it's finally good to see. Obviously Utah's defense sucks, but hey, they made Utah's sucky defense look bad. And that is something that in the Kyle Smith era has not happened very often.
Yep.
Is they make a bad defense look bad.
Absolutely true. Yeah, they they pounded them so hard with that pick and roll, and it took them an entire half really to adjust. And then they came out of the locker room and adjusted, and they sent They sent someone from the weak side to help sort of defend it, which got WSU discombobulated for a short time. And, we had one of the dreaded scoring droughts. But then after that, we kind of figured out from there, okay, that's where the help's coming from. And then we started picking them apart with that. So, real nice to see. I think that's just been, I think there's a familiarity. We know that they haven't been able to practice together as much as you would like, for guys like that. So, to work on that chemistry, requires practice. And we know FA's kind of, I think at this point, kind of sitting out about every other practice to manage his knee issues. I mean, even we just look at, this weekend from Colorado to Utah, looked like a totally different player against Utah, and not in a good way, right? Like against Colorado, he had all this spring and was getting up and was, he really, did some work on Colorado in the first half, and then not as good in the second half. And then against Utah, I mean, he was fine against Utah, but he wasn't quite the same. We kind of didn't see that same athletic explosion that we saw against Colorado. So I know that's an issue. They're just kind of figuring out with that. And one thing I love is that, there was kind of a variety of entry passes, which I think is, is the hard part is, how do you get the ball in there? You can't throw it to the same spot every time. And, there were a couple where they just sort of threw it up. They could see that there was a mismatch, and, I'm just going to throw it up here toward the rim and let them go get it on the roll. And then, it turns into a dunk. So,
and we saw Flowers,
I think they did a good job with that.
We saw Flowers in particular show some patience and kind of let it develop, let Gay get in position, and then find that pass, because they ran it like 5 or 6 times in a row, and Colorado was trying to adjust on the fly, and so they just do something a little different every time, and it was quite a stretch to see that happen. It was nice, Flowers got a layup off of it one time and all that. That was nice. I think what we saw, that part of what made that successful is, Andre Yakimovsky played 31 minutes in this game.
Yep.
He was basically playing the 4. Yep. Or him or Rodman playing the 4. And then they were just, because Gay played 17 minutes in the first half and only played 4 in the second because FA was playing in the second. And so, Deshaun just didn't, I guess they just didn't think he would, again, like if Brandon Carlson plays this game, I think Deshaun Jackson plays 25 minutes. But Deshaun Jackson played 6 minutes. So that was interesting. But yeah, so basically they were just, in terms of the bigs, our 3 bigs, they were just rotating FA and Gay. And it ended up being FA for the most part in the second half. But, I think what they really want to do and what they're probably going to move to is going with, especially with Noah, when you can have Noah in there, Noah and Bamba, so you're not coming out with like we'll see. Yeah, I think Noah gets back into shape, he gets back into the starting lineup, and I'm curious to see if they, Roberts is shooting really well and playing really well, but do they stick with Flowers and Roberts at the 1 and the 2 and then go with like Noah, Rodman, or Yaki, and then FA or Gay or Deshaun? Or do they, or do they keep Bamba in there in the starting lineup? Or, it'll be interesting to see. But I would think where they're going to find the most offensive success, at least, is being able to spread defenses out more. And kind of what you and I talked about, between us is one of the issues with FA, who has completely stopped shooting 3-pointers, is and Gay rarely shoots them, obviously, and then Deshaun never shoots them. So when you have those 2 guys on the floor, 2 of those 3 on the floor at the same time, they're both just in the paint and maybe out to 15 or something. And so there's just not a lot of space for guys to drive. If you're running pick and roll with one, the other one's there. He's got to be clearing out, but he's not a threat to shoot a 3 on the backside or anything. So
right, so easy for his man to help down and
exactly
disrupt those pick and rolls. Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see if they continue on playing. Yakimovsky really has earned playing time too. He's playing well defensively. if he hits his shots from deep, then he's hugely valuable. I'd like to see him. They used him even as a ball handler quite a bit again. I'd like to see him still like develop that inside game a little more, because he can get to the paint. It's just when he gets there, it is an adventure.
It's like panic time.
And when he was, when you watched his tape when he was coming from Europe, he went to the bucket all the time.
Yeah, a lot. He looked like a point guard.
Yeah, and it's so weird that he just doesn't have the confidence. I mean, he shot 20% on twos last year, so I guess that kind of kills your confidence. But
maybe.
But,
he's so strong too. That's the other piece.
Yeah.
I'm like,
that's why
usually guys that struggle get
defender.
knocked off their spot, and he's not.
Yeah.
He can't get knocked off his spot. He's 215 or 220 or whatever he is, but he has made, by the way, credit where credit's due. I mean, he has made 50% of his twos. He is 12 of 14. So.
He's only taken 14.
Or 12 of 24, I mean. So he's at a rate to barely exceed the number that he took last year of twos.
Yeah.
So.
He's definitely like in a proportion of the shots he is taking more twos this year, because he's at 24 of his 58 shots are twos. Last year was 44 of his 147 shots.
Yep.
So he's taking roughly 40% versus 30%, whatever. So he's taking them
getting
more.
To the foul line. Getting to the foul line, too.
He's getting to the foul line a little bit more. I mean, that comes with taking 2-point shots. He's hitting 47% of his threes. So hell yeah, man, keep up with that. But it's if he just, I see him as a guy that could be higher than a 15% possession.
Yes.
He could be a 20+% possession guy. But he just needs to be a little bit more assertive, and then it's even easier to keep him on the floor, because he's providing a lot more defensively, I think, than they ever expected at this point. And he's just pesky. He's not the primary rebounder, but if there's one there to grab, he was doing a great job against Utah, grabbing offensive rebounds, or playing that just pesky. Bothering a guy and tipping it to someone else, game. So, I like to see that from him. And then obviously, Gay has been pretty consistent, but he's, should be a high school senior. So it's hard to, sometimes it's hard to, people you might get frustrated because like, wow, he 5 of 6, 11 points in this game, and they had like 2 points in the last game. Like, it's really just, he's figuring it out, man. Like, he's figuring it out. He just makes such incredible plays when he makes them. So you're like, keep doing that. But yeah, and it was good to see Noah get back in there. Have a pretty solid game.
A really good game.
Yeah.
Like, that was a pretty vintage Noah Williams performance. Like, he wasn't pressing it. He wasn't trying to take over. He wasn't out of control. He was opportunistic. And yeah, I told a guy he was too small, which was great. And I mean, that's pretty awesome to see. I think that was more than anybody expected. I'm sure it was more than the coaches were expecting.
I think he probably played himself into more minutes than they expected.
Yeah, I think so. Because he looked good. He didn't look like he was getting winded, despite the lack of practice time.
Once in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. So maybe that's what we needed. You mentioned who we end up starting going forward. I mean, Terrell Roberts had a amazing weekend. He was really the MVP of the weekend. I mean, we've, talked so much about, the bigs or whatever. And, but so much of that was, Terrell Roberts finally, I think, playing like the guy that we thought he would when we signed him. And if he keeps playing like that, that makes up for, whatever defensive questions there are. And even defensively, he was fine until we went zone. So, I mean, the zone was, that zone for the first 2 years of Kyle Smith, the zone was actually a pretty effective tool. But we're just smaller on the perimeter than we've been. Yep. And it was really obvious against Colorado that zone is tough when you're running two guards out there that are, 5'11" and 6'1", maybe. maybe that's all. Makes life pretty difficult. But otherwise, it seems like he's kind of figuring some things out defensively. He's a hell of a competitor. I'm sure that's, a big part of what the coaches love about him. He was getting to the rim. He took almost as many twos as he did threes, and made half of them. So, I mean, I don't know what more you could really ask for. He was great. If he keeps playing like that, that's a real big difference maker for the offense.
Yeah, and what they got coming up this weekend, obviously it was going to be a game on Wednesday, but now it's a game on Thursday at 2, still on ESPNU, by the way. If you're looking for that game on your schedule, today I went and looked for it on ESPNU, and it was just this like generic college basketball placeholder. So if you're listening to this before the Stanford game, you might need to, if you like to DVR the games like I do, just in case they win and you want to watch it again, I would recommend going and finding and manually setting your DVR, because if you have that, Washington State basketball automatic record like I do, it's going to miss it because it doesn't say anything about WSU basketball in there. So WSU plays Stanford at 2:00, annoyingly, on Thursday. But Stanford now is looking like a much bigger fish, much fatter catch.
Yeah.
Now that they have beaten USC today and gave USC their first loss of the season.
Yeah, that was shocking. I don't think shocking is too strong of a word to say there. I wrote in my Monday column that Stanford would probably be, despite Stanford being ranked higher than Cal and Ken Palm, they'd probably be the easier of the two games just because of some stuff that Cal brings to the table. But yeah, maybe not. I don't know. I do like the fact that they are coming off a really big win and having to fly up to Pullman and then play us in a 2 p.m. game.
Yeah,
I think that's to our benefit. Unless the crowd is super depressed, then maybe it's not. I don't know. Maybe I'm talking myself into something that's not there. But at the same time, I don't mind a team playing in California and then having to fly to Pullman and play 2 days later. I don't mind that at all. So, but yeah, I think, great opportunity for a sweep this weekend for sure, even if it's a little more formidable than maybe we thought. But, weird stuff happens. And even if Stanford's a little better, it's probably good for our tournament chances to have them, beating USC. We beat them, who beat USC if we can win the game. And, that's good.
I think the best thing for the league, any team outside of the top three hoping to get in the tournament right now, is that, 3 teams separate themselves a little bit and then they can beat each other and get big win. They can beat everyone else and then beat each other. And then, Stanford coming into that game was 101 in net. I got to think they're going to jump pretty significantly after beating USC. We'll know in the morning, but that becomes a better looking game, and hopefully a better looking win if WSU can get it. Looking at Stanford, what I worry about most is the rebounding. Especially if we're playing smaller. Stanford's very good defensive rebounding team. Maybe harder to get our second chances against them, and then they're very good offensive rebounding team too. But where WSU can kind of make up those possessions is in turnovers. Stanford is real bad at giving the ball away. And WSU's pretty good at taking it away and pretty good at not giving it away. So hopefully WSU can dominate that turnover game, get to the free throw line. Stanford, they not a big 3-point shooting team, so it's kind of weird that they don't have a great interior presence. But hopefully WSU. Here's the thing: WSU's favored in both of these games, and against Cal, Cal looks better than they did at the start of the season for sure. But they've definitely they started. Well, I guess they started about 100, and they are about 100. I guess they're better than they did when they lost their first couple games, and to UC San Diego in particular. and got blown out by Florida, but they've they beat Santa Clara, they beat Arizona State badly like we did. Arizona State's looking pretty bad now, so they got some players. They just had a tough weekend because they had to host USC and UCLA, which a lot of teams are going to take 2 L's doing that this year. So, they're coming in. They play on Wednesday, so they get a little more rest than Stanford does. But they got some hoopers. They still got Anticevic. He's annoying. Shepard is going to put up a bunch of shots. Andre Kelly is still a guy that's going to be annoying. He's big body versus our kind of thinner front line, so he could give us some trouble there. They have a pretty solid defense, pretty terrible offense. Hopefully we can exploit that terrible offense by just shutting them down. And that's what you'd hope there, particularly on the just locking down the rebounds, not giving up much of the foul line. All that, just not letting them, they're a terrible shooting team, just, putting them in a bad place shooting, which, WSU is pretty good at doing. So hopefully that I anticipate that one to be a bit of a defensive struggle. Cal's going to slow the game down. Hopefully
way down.
Yeah.
like Dick Bennett slow down.
Yeah,
like they are slow. They are 342nd in the nation in average length of possession on offense. Like it is when they get the ball, on average, they hold it for almost 20 seconds. On average. That's
and they don't
bonkers.
They don't force many turnovers on defense.
Nope. So they don't get any quick buckets going the other way.
And they're also a very good defensive rebounding team like Stanford. So this could be WSU probably you got to make some shots this weekend because it's be a lot harder to get those easy buckets off the putbacks. So, if they go cold from 3 in one of these games, that could be pretty bad for WSU because these two teams lock down the defensive glass pretty well. And
Cal will give you threes.
Yeah, Cal will give you threes. Yep. So I anticipate against Cal, WSU is going to shoot a fair amount of threes, and
that game is going to be. I can already see it now. That game is going to be one where we are sitting there and we're watching it, and we are annoyed. We are annoyed, and we are annoyed, and we are annoyed. And fans on Twitter are going bonkers. I thought Cal sucked. How come we're not destroying Cal? Like that's where I see that one going, because it is. They are just going to be irritating, I think. If we run away with it, that's great. But I if you were asked whatever the line is on that game, I'd probably take Cal plus the points because I just think it's going to be a very annoying game, a very frustrating game. Cal is really going to test their patience. I think that's going to be annoying.
One interesting thing is that if they can get, Cal's not super deep. So if you can get, Anticevic or Kelly into foul trouble, Mark Fox does not play guys with 2 fouls. Like they're 302nd in foul, 2 foul percentage. 2 foul participation percentage, which means if a guy gets 2 fouls in the half, what percentage of his normal minutes does he still play? And for the Cal, it's less than 7%. So, which is one of the lower ones in the country. So,
average, by the way, is 21%.
Average is 21. So they're going to keep those.
So really
on the bench, and the guys honestly that are backing them up aren't the same level of defensive capability and aren't the same level of rebounding in particular. Both Anticevic and Kelly, great rebounders defensively. And if you can get one of them out, then maybe you can start working the glass. So, I don't know if they can find a way. It's going to be tempting. They're going to give them the threes. They're going to take them. But if they can find a way to get inside and draw a couple fouls on those guys, maybe they could, get into the game they want. But it's going to be frustrating. It just is. Like it's going to be a slow, frustrating game.
Yeah,
but
it's
hopefully,
be a slog.
WSU has a good opportunity to take both of these games this weekend, and honestly, I guarantee that is their goal. They are not looking for a split. They are looking for a sweep.
No.
They need a sweep. If they want to reach their postseason goals, they need a sweep this weekend. When we say need, we don't know what they're going to need. We don't know what they're going to get later. But you're running out of games. You're halfway through the season. You're running out of time to make things up. Yep. And so, if you want to stay relevant in that conversation or get relevant in that conversation, you're going to need to get a couple W's this weekend.
Yeah. it's 30 games is such a small amount, man. You could take just about any 30-game sample from an NBA team and find, really, really good 30-game stretches and pretty bad 30-game stretches. And, 30 games just isn't that much. It goes by real fast. And like you said, they're running out of time, man. They got to get some wins. And, they've already coughed some up that they needed to win. And so your margin is just, smaller. And the more you keep losing to teams like that, the more you got to beat teams like UCLA, USC, Arizona, which you probably already need to beat anyway. But, you going from saying, well, if you get one of those and win a whole bunch of other games, you're probably pretty okay, to, well, now we got to win 2 or 3 of those 3 games. And then also maybe beat one of them again in the Pac-12 tournament. And you just, you'd like to give yourself, some breathing room. I think if they go 6-2 over this stretch of 8 games, so we haven't really talked about that, but they got a great stretch here. Very, very beatable teams. Half at home, half on the road. But, probably the toughest game is, I think, at Oregon, right? Like that's the one that's probably the hardest. So it's, and the opportunity's there. If they can get 6 of 8, they're probably back in the conversation. I don't know that they're necessarily, first 4 out or next 4 out or anything like that, but they're back on the radar.
They have a chance to play themselves into it.
Right. They're back on the radar.
And part of what puts them there is because after the win over Utah, they're 49th in net, which is not a bad place to, that's a place where you can move up where you can move into the field from. If they were sitting in the 80s, 90s, 100 right now, you have a lot of work. You pretty much have to win everything, but but now they're in a little more comfortable place because they're probably going to have, if they go 6 of 8, they're going to be higher in the net than they are now. And if you're getting into the 30s, then you're going to be, the committee's going to look at you regardless. So you're going to be in the conversation if you're in the 30s in net. And so, they have a chance if they can keep stacking wins coming up against teams that they should. They can beat every single team, every one of these next 8 games. That is games that they can win. It's funny, the Stanford away game flipped to a coin toss against WSU because of Stanford beating USC. But still, their worst win percentage over the next 8 games in prediction, their worst probability is 45% at Oregon, which is basically a coin flip. And then 50% at Stanford, basically a coin flip. So they're in a position, but what I'm writing about right now, and they've just not been lucky in these close games. And they, Ken Pom, his numbers think they should be 11 and, what are they? They should be 11-4 or 12-3. And then shot quality, another website that measures success of teams based, predicts how good teams should be based on the quality of shots that they get, which is a very good predictor. We know shooting has the best correlation with success. It's always shooting has the best correlation with success or failure is shooting. And so WSU, based on their shot quality, that shot quality thinks they should be 11-4 right now. And if they had 2 more wins, how would we be feeling about this team? And so, and frankly,
let's say you take 2 of those losses off the board. Let's take the loss to Boise State off the board and the loss to South Dakota State off the board. How do you feel at that point?
You're feeling a lot better.
You're feeling totally different.
And speaking of like WSU's luck so far is not it's not only been unlucky, it's been extremely unlucky. They are on KenPom's luck, which he defines as your winning percentage difference from what he expects versus what the reality is 352nd, 16% lower. So he's expecting WSU to have won 76% of their games right now, which would be like 11.4 wins, whatever. And they've won 9. So they've been incredibly unlucky. You can pinpoint some of that luck. Most of the guys before the South Dakota State game in the locker room puking their brains out, some pretty key guys who were very clearly sick. And then you have, Noah and Bamba missing, 2 guys who have been starters quite frequently missing Eastern. You have guys still kind of recovering from being sick when you host New Mexico State. So there are definitely some games, and then plus, that USC game was essentially a coin flip, and it went against WSU. And, Noah had a shot at the end. If that goes in, it's a different game, So and all of that luck has essentially broken against WSU so far. And we joked about it, but, Sherwood pointed out, like, they have not won a game where they led by less than 19 points at one point. So they're undefeated in those games. All 9 of their wins, they were up by 19 points at some point, including the Utah game where they were up by exactly 19 points at one point. And then if they were up by 18, they've led in every game. If they were up by 18 or less, if their biggest lead was 18 or less, they've lost every single game. So 0-6 with a biggest lead of 18 or fewer, 9-0 with the biggest lead of 19 or more. And that's it. Like, that's crazy. And you hope, and there's no guarantee that this changes. Like you just said, Jeff, this is a short season. Weird crap can just keep happening.
Yep. For 30 games, they could just keep losing close games.
Happening. We've seen weird crap in Major League Baseball seasons happen for entire seasons over and over and over again. Like, so, these are not big samples. Like, it can keep happening. But if you want to have some hope, if WSU, maybe if they got all their guys in there, maybe they've figured out their lineup finally. Maybe, they're not going to miss games because of sickness or whatever. Maybe they're going to hit a few more shots down the stretch in a couple games. Maybe we saw some of that luck start to turn around against Utah. Maybe they can get some of that luck to turn around in this next stretch and down, in the second half of the season. And maybe this team looks like the team, because honestly, where their rating is on KenPom and on Net and on Bart Torvik, where they're like in the top, where they're like 26th in Bart Torvik.
Yeah. Which is wild. I don't know where that comes from. But Bart Torvik's is KenPom's old system, basically. Yeah. And maybe he doesn't cap garbage time in the same way. I don't know, but yeah, maybe. It's wild.
But yeah, and that's probably part of it too. These are some numbers like, that's kind of where we expected this team to be. They started in the 60s on KenPom. They've moved up. If they would have moved up to 43, you would have thought they would have had more wins right now.
Yep.
And they don't have them. They're 9-6. It's a bummer. We've been pissed off. But maybe some of these games will flip for them, and we can have a lot more fun in the second half. That's what I'm hoping for. That's my positivity, is that they will flip and they'll start. They'll get the games they'll get the wins that fit their talent level. And maybe some of the more, some of the experience for the younger guys, and maybe the team will have a bit more cohesion, and it'll just all work and it'll click, and because it's still there for them, it's not over. They can still play themselves into an at-large bid. There's still a chance. They just have to win a lot of games, and they have to win more games because they've been unlucky so far.
Yep.
So yeah, I've been writing that post. Hopefully I'll get it done tomorrow. So you guys can all read it. But you get the preview on the podcast. So yeah, as always, we talk about the men's basketball team for an insanely long time. Let's switch to to the women's basketball team real quick. Real tough loss against Arizona. They played them real tough for 2 of the 4 quarters. The second and third quarter not so good. First quarter good. The first quarter not good. Third quarter not good. Second and fourth quarter is good. But really it comes down, Charlize wasn't playing all that well, but then she steps up and hits a shot with about 30 seconds left to get them within 2 against undefeated number 4 Arizona. So it's 54-52. Previous 2 times down, the refs had called touch fouls on WSU up top to put Arizona on the line for some easy points. They do that again. They call a touch foul 35 feet from the basket on when WSU just hoping for a stop. It was actually about 45 seconds left, I guess, 47 seconds when Charlize hit the 3. So, trying to get a stop and then a score to tie the game or win. They call a foul. Cammie Etheridge gets rightfully mad. They call a technical foul. As refs like to do, they like to make a shitty call, and then they like to compound it by teeing up the team when they get mad about that shitty call. And the thing about technical fouls is they're not just 2 shots and then return to the state of the game. They are 2 shots on the ball. So Arizona got 4 straight free throws, of which they made 3. And then they got the ball back and scored. So it went from a 2-point game to a 7-point game, 59-52, with around 30 seconds left. It was essentially over at that point. So what was coming down to the wire as a real close game, much like it was last season in Pullman, between these 2 teams, was essentially just decided in one possession with some help from the refs, which was real frustrating. They came into the fourth quarter down by 15. They fought all the way back to cut it to 2. Played some great defense in the fourth quarter. And it's just frustrating that the refs just want to give the game away, just not let it be decided by the players and just kind of decide it yourselves. Because if you're calling that tech, you're calling that fine. You call the foul, but then you call the tech. Maybe I don't know what Cammie said, but it must have been real bad.
It couldn't have been that bad.
If they're going to decide the game,
that bad to demand a technical.
They have to know if they're calling a technical foul, they're ending the game right there.
Right.
Like it's over.
Yep.
So
yeah, it's. I mean, Pac-12 refs are the only thing, Talk Nooser, that I can conclude is that that the refs are taught to do these things, because we've seen these things happen over and over and over again on both the men's and the women's side. We've seen far more sketchy officiating on the women's side than the men's side after. Yes. Watching women's basketball as much as we did, last year, realizing that, perhaps the level of officiating in women's college basketball is even less impressive than the men's side. But the men's side, like they just, they are, taught to be involved, I guess, because that's the only thing I can conclude after watching them consistently insert themselves into games, after consistently watching them, call things super tight around the basket to the point that, nobody can really play their big men, the way they want to. The game against Colorado, like the big men, made up, I want to say like 17 of the 42 fouls. They were the big men between the 2 teams. The 6 guys who played in the front court for the 2 teams were committing fouls at a rate of 8.5 or 8.1 or something like that per 40 minutes, and it's just, I don't understand why that's a thing. I mean, you watch other conferences, it's just not like that, and I don't know why the Pac-12 has decided that they want to do things differently, or they want to interpret things more strictly or whatever. But it really is, man, it makes it hard to watch the games, man. There's not enough flow, and then they do things that, have, sort of an outsized influence over the game. And it just really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's frustrating watching, not the players decide it. And I know that's kind of cliche, and I get it. I mean, if things are a foul, it's a foul. Like, I'm not saying don't call fouls because it's late in the game, but also, maybe have a little discretion, and, maybe, I don't know, late in a game against a top 10 opponent maybe is not the time to tee up a coach for a borderline thing. I have a hard time believing that she said anything that was that bad, where you had to do that. I mean, maybe she'd been warned earlier in the game. I don't know, but it's just it's just not necessary. It's really not. And you don't have to. And as I've always said with Pac-12 officials, it seems like they look for reasons to make calls instead of reasons to not make calls. And to me, that's sort of a fundamental, difference and a discrepancy between what is and what should be. Like, you should be looking for ways to not get involved, if you can help it. And Pac-12 officials are always looking for reasons to blow their whistles or throw flags. And I don't know, man. I don't know if it's a West Coast thing or the way they're being taught by their officiating chiefs, but it sure is frustrating, man. It's like, I watch some NBA. I watched the Klay games. I watch a fair amount of NBA, and, the amount of body contact they let go in the post, is a lot compared to what Pac-12 officials let happen. And, it's really frustrating to watch, so much body contact, get called. And I wish I know that NBA officials are the best officials on the planet, but it sure would be nice if they would maybe take a little bit of a clue or cue from that and just let some things go, man. Just let some things go.
Yeah. And now that leaves, it obviously WSU wouldn't necessarily have won that game without that call. They still would have had work to do, but it took away the chance at a big win that could really help them, because they're sitting 75th in net right now. They need some boost. This weekend they're playing at UCLA at USC. UCLA, not the team they were last year when they got a top 10 win over them. They're actually 66th in net. They're 5-4 right now. And Southern Cal is 55th in net. So these are two games, potentially WSU could win on the road, and either one of them would be a solid, it would be a quadrant 1 win, because on the road, quadrant 1, if they're top 75. So the two opportunities for quadrant 1 wins on the weekend here against teams that they can beat. So this is a really big weekend for WSU if they want to get back, again, like we were talking about the men, get back into the conversation for the tournament. They're going to need to. I mean, they at least need a split this weekend, and getting a split this weekend, you'd have one, Q1 win, a quadrant 1 win on there, and that would be helpful. I think. Because probably both these teams will stick around in there because of the schedules they play and everything. So they're obviously on the fringe, but still, it's getting 1 or 2 win. Getting 1 win this weekend, getting 2 would be amazing. Getting 1 would be great. So big weekend for them at the Southern California schools. Because really, there's not a. Last year there was 3 top 10 Pac-12 teams. This year there's 2. And then there's a lot of the kind of 20 to 30 range. So there's less chance for the big wins. So you need to stack up these kind of middle tier wins that actually, when they're on the road, count as top tier wins. So, obviously they showed against Arizona, they can go toe to toe with anyone anyone but Stanford.
Yeah. That's a different.
But that's just the whole thing. But anyone but Stanford, they can go toe to toe. They showed last year. They played both of these teams down to the wire in overtime. They lost both of them in overtime last year to both these teams, USC and Southern, and UCLA. So it's a big weekend for them, especially when they couldn't get that big win last weekend. And then they missed another opportunity with like, 40s range team against Arizona State, because that game was canceled because of COVID in Arizona State's program. Hopefully they get it back at some point. But that was an opportunity they missed, and they have 2 more opportunities this weekend. Hopefully they can capitalize, because they really need it right now. They're not in the picture. They need to win some games. So hopefully they can get that done, and we can start talking about, looking at their bracketology going forward.
Yep. Yeah, it was always, the last season was built on a handful of big wins. And so, in the back of my mind, I was always kind of thinking like, are they poised to really take a big step forward? You could see avenues to that, if Bella got more consistent, more effective, less foul prone, things like that. If Crystal settles down some of the turnovers, et cetera, et cetera. And you said, okay, but ultimately it kind of felt like, to me anyway, that the follow-up act might actually be kind of tough. Because there wasn't really a super obvious path toward making a big jump. And so, and I think you're kind of seeing that, the record's good, but ultimately, they're going to have to show that they can beat some of these teams again, like they did last year. And, and hopefully they can, perhaps they can. But they've missed a couple of chances already. Now the Pac, as you mentioned, Pac-12 women's basketball, lots of chances to get wins like that, but still it's, at some point we gotta get some of these, just kind of like the men as well. And, so this weekend's going to be big in that regard.
Yeah. So this weekend is potentially the first of, I think Oregon is in the top 30. Oregon State's are on the top 30. Washington's not good. They have 2 games in a row against them. But then you're getting a lot of Q1 opportunities. But again, you have to win them. You have to get some, quadrant 1 wins. They have a lot more quadrant 1 opportunities than the men's team does. And, that was part of, like you said, they were able to stack some of those last year. And they're gonna need to do that again to make up some ground here. They have that Gonzaga win. That's a quadrant 1 win. So that one's still in. They're not taking that one away. Gonzaga is not. They're like 33. They're not going to fall below 75. There's no way. So that one's going to stay. That one's going to stick. Obviously, you can hope. I won't say root for Gonzaga, but you hope they don't fall too much, so it looks better. It looks as good as possible. So should be a fun weekend. Friday at 7. Sunday at noon. They're both on. So USC's game is on Pac-12 Washington. The UCLA game says Pac-12 Los Angeles, so I'm sure you can get it on the app, so you can watch both those games this weekend. We talked about Klay, we talked about men's hoops, women's hoops. I guess that's all, man. I guess all we have left to say is go Cougs.
Go Cougs, Craig. Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
Get vaccinated.
Get vaccinated.